Another example with Joe. Whoops. Hope I didn't just mess that up. The nominee was he. There's our answer. It's a nominative case pronoun because Joe is a predicate nominative. It sounds a little bit strange. Okay, a couple of other pairs. We is always a subject or a predicate nominative. We don't have an issue with it, again, in the subject spot. No one would say us took a vacation, no one I know anyway, or him mowed the lawn. But we might say the winners were us, or the first one there was him. And there's a reason why we tend to want to put in this other kind of pronoun there, and that's because of what the objective case pronouns do. I'll explain that in just a second. So our takeaway here is that anything that can be a subject, any pronoun that acts as a subject, will also complete a linking verb. I'll show you in a little bit more detail here. Anything that can go in the left side, in that first blank, which would be a subject, would also go in the right side of the second sentence. So anything that you can think to put in before watching a movie, I am watching a movie, you are watching a movie, he, she is watching a movie, they are watching a movie, we are watching a movie. Those are all the ones I can think of. We can make it a question. Who is watching a movie? Whoever is watching a movie. All of those can also go in the blank in the second sentence, even though it'll sound weird. It's grammatically correct. The author of the book is I. The authors of the book are we. The author of the book is she. The author of the book is he. The author of the book is you. You we don't have an issue with, because if you noticed, it doesn't change. It doesn't shift cases. It stays the same. Same thing with the word it. So everything that goes in the first blank will go in the second blank as well, even though it may sound strange, because they're predicate nominatives. They're being made equal to whatever's to the left of it. It does the same kind of job as a subject. I think I got all those correct. So all of those would go into either blank correctly, even though it'll sound strange in that second sentence. Okay, the objective case. Objective case pronouns have two jobs also, just like predicate nominatives, but they're both objects. So object of a verb or object of a preposition. And all that means is that it's an object, it's receiving the action of a verb, or it's receiving the idea of a preposition. If you think about object being like what you aim at, object of your attention, object of your affection, it's something is pointed towards a thing. And so when a pronoun is in that spot, a verb is pointed towards it, or a preposition is pointed towards it, we shift the pronoun into another form in English. We do this very naturally. Nobody really has to think about it. So Sam threw the ball. The ball is object of the preposition threw. Sam threw me the ball. Right? Me is also receiving the idea of throw, and ball's receiving it. But I wouldn't say, I don't know anybody who would say Sam threw I the ball. There's not an issue there. We know to put in the right kind of pronoun there. We just don't know that it's called an objective case pronoun. Over the river, through the woods, to grandmother's house. River, woods, house are all receiving the idea of their preposition. So over what? Over the river, right? It's pointed towards river. River is the object of over. Woods is the object of through. House is the object of to. It's receiving that idea. Pronouns work the same way. We can put pronouns behind these prepositions, with him, without her, instead of me, for them. Or nobody naturally is going to say with he, without she, instead of I, or for they. Our grammar in our heads just is not formed that way. Okay, so why am I teaching you this if it's easy? Well, there are some exceptions, and it's the exceptions that we want to focus on. Okay, we're not at exceptions yet. This is one way to sort of pair out what is nominative and what is objective. So if you're not sure of which pronouns are nominative, you can run them through this little test. Anything that can go in front of a verb would be a subject, correct? And we know that subjects are always nominative case when they're personal pronouns. So any personal pronoun you can put in front of the word went, or pick any verb you want, is going to be in that nominative case. There they are. Those are your nominative case pronouns, which means those are all the pronouns that would work as a subject or that would work as a predicate nominative, right? Completing a linking verb. What about objective? Well, we just need to pick something, same kind of test where we plug in a pronoun after a preposition. In this case, I chose the word with. Okay, anything that goes in there and sounds correct is correct. With me, with you, with him, with her, with it, with us, with them. Now, whom and whomever may be new to you. Maybe you don't know how to use those. Here's a clue how to use who or whom. Look at the end of whom. There's an M there. And if you look through this list, oddly enough, it shows up in a couple of other pronouns. Them has an M at the end. Him has an M at the end. Me has an M. So in English, for some reason, over our 1500-year, roughly, evolution of the development of the language, the subjective case pronoun has attached an M to several of them. Well, that's one way to remember that whom and whomever are objective case. With whom, with whomever. Okay, there's our two sets of pronouns. Here's one of the exceptions that I want to point out. Just because you've got a sentence that creates a compound doesn't mean that any of these rules change, and this is where a lot of people, and educated people, break this rule. Look at the blank in the first sentence. This matter is for you and I or me. If I leave it up to just saying it sort of intuitively and reflexively how we want it to sound, most people are going to put in I because they think that that sounds more formal, more proper. This matters for you and I, as opposed to this matters for you and me. However, one of those breaks the rule. Just because it's a compound doesn't mean that the rule changed. You would not say this matter is for I. No one would say that. So why would we keep saying it just because we're adding a you? There's no reason to. So this matter is for you and me is grammatically correct. The bus took he and I or him and me to the mall. He and I may sound more formal and proper, but it does not make sense grammatically. You need objective case pronouns, right? Those two pronouns are being taken by the bus. They're receiving the action of take. So we need objective case pronouns. And you could pair it out as singular sentences too. That's one way to sort of figure it out. The bus took him and the bus took me to the mall. No one would say the bus took I and the bus took he to the mall. Just because they're compound being joined together doesn't mean that this rule changes. Okay, so that's one. The other issue I want to talk about is who and whoever. And I mentioned it in the previous slide. But who, whoever is nominative. So anything out of that nominative list, any subjects, any predicate nominatives, we want who or whoever. We don't want to add the M. We only add the M if it's objective. The trick with these is whom and whomever often does not sit right behind the thing that it's an object of or sit directly in front of a verb. So you kind of have to think more in general terms, like is the whom receiving the general idea of the sentence or the clause, or is it doing something? Is it receiving an idea or doing it? And that will determine if it's objective or nominative. You're going to practice this in just a minute. Who won the game? It's a question. Who is doing the winning? It's the subject, right? So it's nominative case. So that's correctly. Whom did you invite? Notice it's in the same spot as the other sentence, but it's not doing the inviting, it's receiving the idea of inviting. Whom is receiving the action of invite. So it becomes an objective case pronoun. Another way to think about that is if you reworded it and said, did you invite him? Did you invite me? Well, that makes sense, right? Did you invite whom? The M is the giveaway, remember. So whom receives the idea, it's objective. Who does the action, it's a subject. Or it could be predicate nominative too. So you got to be careful. Whom did you bake the cake for? Okay, the cake was being baked for whom receives the idea, that preposition for. So it's objective again. These are a little bit tricky, and you have to sort of sit back and think of what's happening in the entire sentence. Is whatever's occupying that spot doing an action or receiving something? And that determines it. All right, let's go to Review C on page 659 in the Green Book. And here we're choosing one form of pronoun or the other, and it looks like they're all either nominative or objective, so think about what's happening. Watch out for compounds. There are a lot of compounds in that exercise. And then on page 664, exercise 7 actually starts, or the directions are at the bottom of 663. Same idea. These are all who or whom. So pick out if whatever's occupying that spot is receiving something, we want the objective case pronoun. If it's doing it, you want the nominative case. Okay, take a minute, work through those two, and on the next slide I'll walk through the answers. Okay, let's start with Review C. Number 1, I'm positive it was. Okay, it was. We have a subject, we have a linking verb, whatever comes after it's a predicate nominative. It's got to be nominative case, so it's they. I'm positive it was they. Sounds weird, but it's correct. Now, nobody uses the predicate nominative form of personal pronouns in the correct way. It's strange, but nobody does. In fact, when I'm writing and I find myself needing to write it, I usually reword the sentence. I'll just recast it so I sort of avoid it, because it's so strange to our ear that most writers will just try not to run into having to use the predicate nominative pronouns. But I want you to know the rule. I want you to be thinking about it, so that's why we're spending this time on it. Okay, number 2. He or him and I or me are working on a special science project. Well, they're both doing the working. So they're both subjects. So we need nominative case, which is going to be he and I. He and I are working. Now that sounds good and correct and formal and proper, right? And I think that's why we tend to lump the I in with the other pronoun when we do these compounds. Why people say things like, I went to the park with, or he went to the park with Bobby and I, right? Because our moms will correct us when we say, Jimmy and me want to go to the park. No, that's Jimmy and I want to go to the park. And so we get used to adding the and I, and it gets added on to everything, including objective case pronouns, and we just, no matter where we do it, if there's a compound showing up, we throw on the I at the end. And we end up breaking the grammar rule half the time. Okay, number 3. Excuse me, is that package on the table for mother or for me? Right, object of the preposition for. Number 4. No one told Otis or... Now, this is a compound, right? So if we're not sure, just get rid of Otis. No one told me about the game, right? Just because you're adding Otis doesn't mean that the rule changes. Still me. Number 5. I hope that you and she, I hope that she will be able to get, let's get rid of you. I hope that she will be able to get there on time. I hope that you and she. Number 6, the teacher gave Rosa and, well, I don't know. What do you think? If you get rid of Rosa, what sounds correct? The teacher gave me extra math homework, right? The teacher gave Rosa and me extra math homework. But you may want to say the teacher gave Rosa and I. It sounds so much more formal. Well, it doesn't sound more formal to me. When I hear people say that, I think they're just trying to sound formal and blowing it. So you guys are going to do better than that, though. All right, number 7. Here's the tricky one, because that apostrophe s, right? That is, and is a linking verb. That is he on the red bicycle. Number 8. Between you and me, I like your plan better than George's plan. Number 9. When are your parents and... Well, let's get rid of parents if we're not sure how it sounds correct. When are they coming home? Parents and they coming home. Everyone in the class except her had read the selection. Everyone in the class except me had read the collection. Her and me. There we have it. Objective and nominative case pronouns. All right, let's practice the who and whom. Exercise 7. Number 1, Mrs. James, whom I work for. Right? It's receiving the idea of the pronoun for. So it's whom. Number 2, is there anyone here who needs a bus pass? Because they're doing the needing. Right? The who is doing the needing. They're acting like a subject. Number 3, she is the only one whom everybody trusts. Receiving the idea of trust. Notice it doesn't really matter where it's located in the sentence. You have to be thinking in big ideas here. Like the whom here is being trusted by someone, right? It's receiving the action. So it's objective. It's the object of something. Number 4, both of the women who ran for election. The who did something. The who is a subject. Number 5, I helped Mr. Thompson, who was shingling his porch roof. He was obviously doing something, right? He was being the subject. Eileen couldn't guess who it was. Remember the predicate nominative thing. It still works. But it's not sitting to the right of the linking verb, because these who or whom's, they sort of throw things off. It's almost like a question. Number 6. Oops, that was 6. Who. 7. It was Octavio Paz who won. He did the action. Number 8. Her grandmother, to whom she sent the flowers, right, receives the object of that preposition to, or it is the object. So it's whom, to whom. Number 9. The author, whom you admire. Right, you admire whom. He's receiving the admiration. So it's whom. And 10, Shirley Chisholm, whom we are studying. Right, receiving the studying, object of our studying. Whom. So you can't just interchangeably switch out who and whom. They have very specific ideas. In the same way that you wouldn't just arbitrarily switch out he and him, you can't do it to who or whom. So there you go, a little practice. Thanks, guys. See you soon.